What's going on, everybody? It's Jay here from Nerd Takes, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about some news we got from James Gunn and the DCU. So, to start, let's go with a little bit of info that came out of a recent interview he did where he highlights what the first five projects of his DCU will be. According to James Gunn, the first five projects will be Superman Legacy, which that much we knew because it's already well into production, Creature Commandos, which again, we knew that as it's due out next month, the Green Lantern series, Peacemaker Season 2, and Supergirl. Now, in terms of my take on all this, I'll start with Peacemaker. This show to me does not need to be continued, if I'm being honest. In general, I thought the first season was overrated. I mean, it's fine. I didn't think it was horrible or anything. And there were moments that I enjoyed. But as a whole, I just thought the Peacemaker gimmick and humor got really old really fast. It feels like it wants to be Deadpool, but it lacks the charm and charisma of Ryan Reynolds to really pull it off. And on top of that, there's been a lack of clarity about this show and its continuity moving over to what's meant to be a new DCU line of storytelling. James Gunn hasn't really been clear on that, and word from him this week was that the story is canon minus the scene of the Justice League at the end of the show, which really doesn't make it any more clear. I suppose it's something that we won't really know exactly how he tries to make it work until we see the show. But the optics of keeping this project from the DCEU has always been a bit odd given his involvement with the series. I would have been fine moving on from this character and this story altogether. Then we have Creature Commandos, which is going to be an animated series, and honestly, for this one, I'm pretty indifferent towards it. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I knew who the Creature Commandos were before I heard of this announcement about a year ago, because I didn't. Honestly, I had never heard of them before. But what I will say about this project, now that I know a little bit more about the characters, is it does seem like it's something that would work well with James Gunn's style. I do think that he's very good at taking obscure and quirky characters and making them more heartfelt and better known. And I do enjoy a good animated project, especially from DC. They've had a high standard of animation for decades, so we're going to have to see on this one. Then there's the Green Lantern series, which honestly, I'm pretty interested in this one. There's really not much to go off of for this one now since they haven't started production yet, but I've always liked the Green Lanterns. My personal favorite is Jon Stewart, but I'm also a fan of Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, and a lot of the rest of them. So honestly, I think doing a show based off the Green Lanterns and their heroics in saving the universe is something that could work really well. Next up, we have Supergirl. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Supergirl as a character in general. I just don't find her to be particularly interesting. And I also feel like DC has tried very hard to force this character onto fans in a live action form with the CW series, as well as in an animated form with the movies that we've seen and even video games like Injustice 2. And unfortunately for DC, it just hasn't worked the way they've wanted it to. Now, I'm not saying they can't make it work. I actually think if someone can, it's probably James Gunn, who's really elevated some other female superhero characters in the past, such as Gamora, Mantis, and Nebula in the Guardians movies, which I'm a fan of all three. So, as much as I'm not really interested in this movie, I am open to being surprised by it being well done. I just think it's a bit of an odd choice to make her the focus of your second film when the first one is about Superman. I personally would have went with a different hero with different powers to Superman if it were my call, but it's not. So, we're just going to have to see. Then finally we have Superman Legacy. This one is interesting to me but in a more cautious way than optimistic. I've never seen James Gunn take on this kind of character in a movie before, so I'm just not sure if he's the right guy to do it. Now, by no means am I saying he can't do it, because it's very possible that he can. I just feel like he's so good with the obscure and quirky, lesser known type characters, and I'm not sure how that translates to a character like Superman, who's a good guy with a strong moral compass and a beacon of hope for the world. So it's going to be interesting to see how he takes on this character, given the fact that he's not only directing this movie, but writing it as well. And I have to say that some of the leaked set photos we've seen, which in fairness haven't been very much, also haven't been very impressive either. I do think the suit looks okay. I'm not a fan of the collar on it, but I can learn to move past that. A concern I'm more focused on, however, is the amount of characters set to show up in this one. It concerns me that it may be just too many characters, which could take away from the focus of the movie that should be a strong Superman story. Attempting to bring in too many characters at once was a major fault of the last attempt at trying to create a live action movie DC universe. So ideally, I'd like to see that issue be avoided this time around, but much like everything else on this list, we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. Overall, I have to say that I find these first five projects that are in focus for them to be underwhelming. Much like the initial announcement of this version of the DCU a year or so ago, when we heard of these projects and a few others they intended to focus on, it just isn't doing much for building hype. At least not for me, anyways. If you are somebody who's hyped about these projects, I'd love to hear why so I could get a different perspective on them. The feeling I have towards most of these projects is curiosity. I'm curious how some of these turn out more than I am excited for them. Which that could be a me thing, and it could also be a state of superhero movies thing. I mean, frankly, it could be a little bit of both. But what I do know is for this universe to really take off, Superman Legacy has to be an absolute hit. That is the quickest way to turn what feels like apathy towards these projects into hype. WB and DC have seemingly put all their faith into James Gunn, so now we'll just have to wait and see if he delivers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back again soon.